try to fail as quickly and as often as you possibly can, because that's going to lead you to success a lot quicker.
Welcome to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about creating more time freedom through passive real estate investing. Passive investing in real estate challenges conventional investment wisdom. We are passionate about learning and sharing resources with others who are ready to transform their investing mindset. Quick disclaimer as always, I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer, ADP. I'm glad you're here. Now let's dig in.
Welcome back, Freedom Point listeners. I'm your host, Jeremy Dyer. I hope that you're having another awesome week. This week has been an interesting one. We're coming off one of our capital raises for an investment, and there are a ton of other things that are going on. As many of you know, I have a short-term RV rental that I recently got up and running, and that's doing well. We're almost completely booked for the summer months. One thing I've also been focusing on recently is creating a basket of diversified investments. I guess it depends on who you're listening to, but it's always an interesting time in the economy. Things are moving in different directions all the time. There's a lot of uncertainty. People have no idea what's going to happen and where they need to be. I found that the way to get past that in terms of mentally feel comfortable with where I'm at is to go pretty broad. And that means diversification. And so I'm thinking a lot about investments and the different types of investments. And ultimately, I'm thinking about how someone can be really successful investing in these times. In fact, what is the key to successful investing? And it's a question that I've tried to get answered by looking at so many different people, interviewing so many different people. I mean, one might say that I'm pretty obsessed with understanding the answer to this. And I think I found the answer, and it sounds kind of crazy. It's not something that I would have said a couple of years ago. Most people would think the answer and the key to successful investing is finding the right strategy. Now, I found, yes, that is important, but that's not the only thing. In fact, I found that's probably only 20% of what makes for successful investing. But the other 80% is found really in your mindset. And I know that might sound kind of crazy, but if you think about a lot of things in life, next year will be the Summer Olympics, and we will watch all the great Olympians and all the new records being set year after year after year. You know, every time you see that, you think, how are those records continuing to be set? Now, I know that there are new training methods. I know that there are new things like that, but really, it's the idea and the mental mindset that creates one's ability to do better. And so we find out how to make that happen. Once we set a new goal, we find a way to achieve it. I mean, there have been times where people thought that we were at the limits of our human potential, whether that's an athletic feat or a mental feat or a business feat. And one by one, these goals keep getting knocked out. I find it's no different in the world of investing, especially real estate investing. You know, your mindset is just as important in investing. And I found that to be the case with most successful investors out there. I'm talking about whether they're hedge fund managers or real estate investors. A lot of them have coaches, and I found that crazy to begin with. I'm thinking to myself, they're so successful. Why do they need somebody else helping them out? I mean, they're some of the richest people in the world, but it turns out that they're constantly fighting against themselves, fighting against their own limiting beliefs. They're always trying to get that edge, and that has to do with their mindset. And I know that investing can be really tricky to navigate, but I believe that with the right mindset, you can be able to achieve your goals and really create the life that everyone's always wanted for both yourself and the people you love. So we've talked about a few things that might help you when it comes to mindset. The number one thing is that you must get over the fear of failure. Now, you've probably heard the saying a ton of times. Failure is not an option. Now, that expression is an admirable idea. It's a good idea to feel like it's not an option. But when it comes to personal growth, we know how important failure is. After all, I think that many of us probably have learned more from our mistakes than our successes. And I've personally failed plenty, whether it's in business, in my sales career, my relationships, whether it's in my personal life. I make mistakes, and that's part of the learning process. But there's so many of us that fear failing, especially losing money, that it keeps us stuck. It keeps us where we're at. Think of it like a plant. They're constantly growing, taking up nutrients, trying to grow. Or if it's not, it's dying and withering away. And I believe that we're the same way. So if failure in that fear of failure is making you stay stagnant, not taking steps to grow and challenge yourself, perhaps you're actually moving in the wrong direction. And many of the most successful people will tell you that failure is just a stepping stone to success. And I absolutely believe that if you take a step forward and it's the wrong one, you move and you pivot into another direction. In fact, I believe that failing quickly, it should be a goal, meaning that when you fail in one way, you know where you're going to go next. And maybe you find out where to go instead of just thinking about where you should be going and staying in the same place. I actually believe that for many of us, that first investment, even though we put so much pressure on it, it's not going to be the one that actually changes our lives. It's not going to change your life, and it didn't change my life. It's going to be more of a learning opportunity, and it might be that third or fourth or fifth investment that really moves the needle and changes things. But without getting through those first couple of investments, you are never going to get there without putting yourself out there, without being okay with making some mistakes and failing. You're never going to get to the ones that actually change your life. So when it comes to this, I like to follow Will Smith's advice. I listen to him sometimes. He says, try to fail as quickly and as often as you possibly can, because that's going to lead you to success a lot quicker. Next, you have to be absolutely specific about your desired outcome. The challenge is that many of us don't take the time to think about what our ideal life is. Whether you're in the car right now, running on the treadmill, or walking with your dogs, whatever it might be, take a moment to envision what your real life or your ideal life would be like. How would you be spending your time? Are you retired? Are you still working part-time? Are you sitting on a beach somewhere? Are you with your family? Are you traveling without being concerned about money? Maybe you're still working, but it's really on your own terms. You're not trying to quit your professional job, but you want to be free from feeling like you must work to support yourself and your family. Maybe you want your day job to really become a hobby for you. The point is, you need to get specific about it and you need to write it down. Now, I never understood, probably a couple of years ago, the power of writing your goals down and being very specific about it. But it's funny because I look back now at some of the times where somebody actually forced me at a conference to write down certain goals and certain audacious goals. When I look back years later at those goals, suddenly they didn't feel all that enormous anymore. There's something to writing something down and having that level of intention that somehow leads your mind to action. So I think it's absolutely important to be specific and to understand why you want your desired outcome. The next thing is kind of along the lines of this, is to really set those goals clear. They need to be actionable goals. It's like, your intention for what you want in life. And then number two, setting some of those exact goals down and then really breaking them down. Like when it comes to setting goals, I've learned to be really, really specific about them. Make sure they're reasonable, but still on the edge of kind of what's comfortable for me, and making sure that I put a time limit on those goals so that it's very measurable and I can know that I'm making progress towards achieving them. I'll give you an example of it. So many of us, when we want to become healthier, we might just say, look, I want to eat healthier. The problem is from day to day, it's hard to measure that. You'll say something like, hey, I'm going to run 3 miles 4 times a week. I'm going to run a mile and a half. I'm going to run in this amount of time. I'm going to make it consistent and do it over 8 weeks. What I choose to eat, I'm going to cut out these specific things, or I'm going to really try to, put on my plate 70% of leafy greens versus the alternative. So the more specific you can get and give yourself something to be accountable to, the better. And then, of course, tell other people about it, because you will be more likely to accomplish your goal. So make sure you're setting those goals. Now, the next step with the mindset stuff, this might seem obvious, but there's so many people and so many would-be investors because of the fear of failure, because they're not setting goals. Because of this, they actually never take action. They never do anything about it. And I don't know if there's any of you out there, and there's no judgment here, but because I've been in this situation too. There have been so many things that I sat on for so long. For those of you who know how I started this podcast, I decided one day I'm going to do this. I'm going to start a podcast, and it took me 1 year to put up my first episode. There are so many reasons why. I was too busy. Nobody would listen to what I had to say or do. I sat on it for a year. So I have been in this situation too. There are so many other things in terms of investing and other things like that. I never took action. So I understand when people say passive real estate investing is intimidating. They don't know how to make that first investment. They don't want to screw it up. They don't know how to take that first step. I'll tell you, there's always a level of risk with anything that you do, especially something that's new. You've encountered that in your life when it comes to being a busy professional, constantly putting yourself out there for clients, prospects, executives. You will put yourself out there, and there's risks there. There's reputational risk. There's risk hurting your emotions and your pride. And then there's also the risk of not knowing the outcome of your risks. But you take action anyways, because you know you had to do that in order to accomplish your goals. I feel absolutely like this with investing. It's the same way you get all the knowledge that you want. You can have all the resources at your disposal, but if you don't take that first step, you're never going to truly learn, and you'll never get to where you want to be. So when somebody tells me, hey, I've been having a tough time getting started because I don't want to lose money, I'll say that not taking that first step actually has a true greater cost. One of the biggest motivators for me that I have in terms of shifting my mindset is simply thinking about where I'm going to be years down the road, or months, or whatever it might be. It's very, very easy for us to think, if I take an action, I could screw this up and go down the rabbit hole of the worst case scenario. But what about the other side? Have you ever considered the cost of what they call inaction or not taking action? In other words, where are you going to be in 5 years, 10 years, if you don't make that first investment, if you don't take that first chance? I've talked to so many people who want to get involved in real estate investing. What if they never take that first chance? Where's your future self going to be? Are you going to be in the same place? Are you going to be more trapped, have less control? Are you going to be in a better place or a worse place? Are you going to be where you want to be in 5 to 10 years if you don't take action today? I'll be honest with you, making a decision not to take action is already a decision. Like when you make a step, it's either forwards or backwards. And I believe there's really, really no middle ground. If you're not moving forward, life is still moving. It's passing you by, and you feel like you're actually moving backwards, in my opinion. So what are some of the decisions that you've made? Maybe a small decision, maybe a bigger decision that has changed your life for the better. Maybe you decided to take a different job or responsibility, make an educated investment or not. And now your life trajectory has gone in a totally different way, good or bad, whatever it might be. Every decision you make changes your life in some way, whether that's to go forward or not to do anything. So I really want to challenge everybody. when you think about your life, where you want to be, are the decisions you're making or not making helping you get closer towards your goal? And I'll tell you, that first step, whatever it might be, it doesn't have to be big. It can be simply reaching out to somebody, connecting with somebody, making a phone call, sending an email, reading a book. It's all these little things that start to add up, give you that momentum, break out of that inertia, and help you get closer to where you want to be. So when I talk to people who have made the shift, and there's so many people now having done this, I've been able to see such amazing transformation in people. There are people that had no investments and now 5 years later are completely financially free. There are people that have just started investing and now are starting to make some decent passive income. And there are still some people that are still waiting to make that first investment. Now, when I talk to the people that have actually taken action, I ask them, what was the shift like? What was the change? And I would say every single one of them will tell me that it had to do with the way they thought about themselves as an investor and really not being held by their fears and the limiting beliefs. It was their mindset change that allowed them to get where they want to be. And so I really want to challenge everyone here. Is that what's holding you back? Is it not having the resources? Is it not having the strategy? Because again, all the strategies are out there for free in courses and in books. Is it really the strategy, or maybe you haven't invested and spent time getting your mindset where it needs to be? Because I'll tell you, if you're listening to this, you're already very, very successful in life. There's no doubt you've gotten to where you are because you're ambitious, set a goal, and made it happen. And I absolutely believe that as busy professionals, as high-income professionals, if we make it this far in our career, we can do it in other areas of our lives. So if I can support you in any way, please let me know. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or at startingpointcapital.com. Thanks for listening and have a great week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the Freedom Point podcast, powered by Starting Point Capital. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the Freedom Point podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. If you're interested in connecting, you can find contact information at startingpointcapital.com.